We're live here on YouTube. Everybody, welcome. I'm going to wait for some people to join me. I'm so glad you guys are here with us today. It's early in the morning here in New York, and I'm going to be doing this on Patreon as well. So if people want to join me live on Patreon, it's patreon.com/the mystical spiral, because I plan to take this off YouTube in a few minutes so we can do this live on Patreon so I could discuss some deeper information that I can't share openly here on YouTube. But we are going to go into some deep, mind-blowing information this morning that's going to blow some people's minds. Let me get the chat room going here. So I have it in another screen. I'll wait for you guys to join me here if we guys got you in the chat room. So I got the chat room here if you guys are with me. So we're going to be talking about plasma, sentient plasma intelligence, how this is related to the ancient gods of all cultures, some of the ancient mysteries and ancient lore that we have of the origins of the universe. And just in general, let me explain the scientific aspect of how plasma and the information that's coming from stars and suns, which is in the form of plasma, light, right? This is how we receive information, right? This is how we are telepathically receiving thoughts, messages, all sorts of divine light is received to us through plasma, through suns and stars, right? And this is what interconnects everything. Even scientifically, we can explain this, right? To explain it in a more metaphysical aspect, you can say that, and I'm here in the chat room if anybody wants to ask questions or anything like that. You can say that all powers and emanations and energies and life, right, emanates amongst stars out in the universe, right? And these powers are then attracted by specific suns. And then the sun directs those powers into the sphere of its solar system, of its planets, of the planets, right? And the planets, they absorb those emanations, those energies from its sun, its star, right? All of those diverse energies that are coming in from other stars as well, right? Throughout the year, the sun, the different alignments, different connections with other stars, other suns, right? And the sun receives these energies from all the diverse stars out within the universe. And then the sun directs those energies into our sphere, right? And then the planets, like Earth, absorbs all of these very diverse energies, and then they emanate them back out, but they're slightly altered by the vibrations of all the life on the planet, right? And then the moon absorbs those energies that's coming back out from the planets, right? Or its planet, every planet's moon, right? And then, because the moon sort of attracts those emanations and absorbs them. And then the moon also alters its vibrational energy because it has its own vibrational energy and an imprint of its own. And then it puts those emanations and those energies back down upon Earth, right? This is how we even form astrology, right? This is how you have astrology. And if you want to say it in a scientific aspect, it's the plasma that's coming from all of the different suns and stars, right? And that's interconnecting all the information that's being sent everywhere. And then the sun is sending it out, the solar wind's bringing it, to it, the specific planets and so on and so on, right? It's all an interconnected plasma solar wind highway network, right? And you have specific intelligences that exist there. In fact, when we leave the physical body, it's my understanding from my own experiences and research, right, that this is the next stage in our evolution. We go back into being a sentient plasma being, and we move on in higher worlds when we start to ascend, right? Sometimes our soul comes back and pushes itself into matter, cling to this third dimension here on Earth, and maybe other similar third dimension realities on other planetary systems, right? But when we go back, our soul goes back into the plasma, sentient intelligence, right? And you have specific life forms that exist here, even groups that are sort of like agents of the plasma akasha information. And when certain information, certain knowledge is accessed, they appear. They are present, you know. And there's various groups of these beings that tend to seem like psychic guardians or agents of of another dimension, right? And we can get into that as well. But this is both science and spirituality fused together, which is the way it's supposed to be, right? They're not supposed to be separate, right? So you have all sorts of sentient life, and this is what the ancients would call in the keepers of the mist, right? And in ancient times, we have all of these. Let me first get them out here. We have all of these myth and legends that is talking about real science, just in a very poetic and spiritual way, right? So one of the old myths of legends that has to even do with the creation of the universe has to talk about various myths, like mists, myths, like a mist, and just various scientific aspects of the universe that is described in a very poetic, spiritual way. And once people start looking into astronomy and plasma physics and the way actually things are interconnected in the universe and how creation happens, it's really incredible how many secrets are already given to us in all these ancient myths and legends. All right. And one of the ancient Etruscan and Italian mystic sort of mythologies, if you want to say, really is kind of sacred information. They talk about how the universe came to be in the ancient folklore of hereditary mysticism in some of the Italian family lines. They talk about how in the days before people even walked Earth, right, that there were certain elements that existed. The spirits of those elements, right, existed. And these were the ones that brought the trees and the meadows and the streams of information and water, and also stuff that became stones and mountains on this planet, right? And before all this had even came to be, right, there was nothing but darkness, right? And then within that darkness, there dwelt this mist. And that was just brooding alone in its solitude. And then the right hand of the mist had a desire for creation, right? And then the left hand held the source for creation. And then the mist stretched forth its hands into that never-ending darkness and uttered those divine names upon the darkness, right? So it's talking about literally how the universe is like the brain of God, and all the particles in the universe, the plasma everywhere, right? That has all the information within it of supernova explosions, like evolution, creation, destruction, rebirth, sustenance, dissolution, all of that, right? All of that is just swirling information that's traveling within the darkness of space, right? Because it's really 99.99% of the universe is plasma, the mass of the universe, right? It's interconnecting everywhere. It is the mist and the sacred fire and the light and the water and the wind, the solar wind. All of that is related to the plasma and what's coming from stars and suns, right? And and all of that is swirling around, right? And as sentient life generates thought, right? And it starts to manifest, depending on the power of that manifestation and thought, those particles within the plasma start to excite and interact and attract one another and start to bang together, and creation starts to form. Life and planetary systems can form depending on the power of this, right? And that's what we're talking about when you even have the ancient logos, the ancient words of wisdom that bring creation, right? That's what we're talking about here. Depending on the power of the force of that thought and the power of the sentient life that's generating that thought. Like sometimes, for instance, on Earth, like forget about higher intelligence that exists outside of Earth, but even on Earth, at one time there existed whole clans that were telepathically linked together doing spiral dance mantras at sacred sites that were harnessing solar energy with archaeoastronomy alignments to a specific sun and star on specific times of the year, and they were generating a powerful directed thought mantra into the universe. Now that creates a powerful manifestation. So imagine if another higher intelligence was doing that, right? So we're talking about what brought our universe, how our universe came to be. Now, the ancients in the folklore, they might be talking about the universe as just being our solar system. So we might also have to remember that. But they're talking about here how the mist stretched forth its hands into the unending darkness and uttered the divine names upon the darkness, and that were born the great ones that in Etruscan or ancient Italian they called Tagni and Uni, right? And these were the ones that were born upon the breaths of the mist, right? They were born in a plasma cloud of creation, right? The Garden of Eden, right? And this is the magnetosphere around Earth, the tree of knowledge of life around Earth. And we're going to get into this, right? And the goddess then moved forth through the night. Remember, we're going to get deeper into it, but on the night side is when souls can enter and travel into the gateway through doorways in the magnetosphere. This is when also the magnetotail accumulates electrons and plasma, that comes in as auroras, right? But this is the goddess. This is the celestial ship of the north, right? That goes through the North Pole, the goddess, right? She moves through the night, right? And this is what's talked about. And then the god has love for the goddess, and he utters his divine flute of 7 reeds, and he plays for her. And then as he plays for her, the worlds form upon every note of the divine reeds. I mean, it's talking about the very sounds of the universe and the sounds of the electrons make when information is coming into our magnetosphere and our world is being seeded with new light and knowledge, right? And it even talked about how there was a union, how worlds formed upon the sacred sounds of the sacred of every note of the sacred flute, and then the god and goddess loved, and they were beneath the stars, and their union formed the silver and golden mist up, and they brought life upon the sacred four winds. I mean, these are the solar winds that they're talking about. And then together they fashioned earth. Right? These are ancient knowledges that has ancient science and spirituality fused together that ultimately comes from Vedic. Oh, Etruscan. Everybody always, scholars for so long have been saying, where did this Etruscan civilization emerge from? Right? Well, these were ancient Vedic from the past, very past, that reemerged after the flood and catastrophes, and then traveled from different places to Egyptian and here and there, and then eventually a portion of these priests, warriors, shaman, descendants were part of what became the Etruscans. If you look into the ancient Etruscan, or now in the Tuscan, in the ancient Tuscany area, in Volterra, and various places like that where some of the ancestors still exist, the ancient Strege family will tell you that the origins of the Etruscan people come from this mysterious star people called the Inu, right? Well, that is a sound shift from the Anus, right? These were one of the ancient Vedic people, right? You had the Kshatriyas, were the warriors, the Asuras, and the Devas, and there were these various Vedic people, right? The Purus, the Anus, right? They were the Anus. That was people that were actually ended up inhabiting ancient northern India at one time, which then migrated towards what became um you know what's interesting is the Etruscans didn't call themselves Etruria, right? That's not what they called themselves. They didn't call themselves the Etruscans. They called themselves the Rasenna. I don't know if people realize that, but the Etruscans did not call themselves Etruscans. Their name was very Vedic sounding. It was Rasenna, right? And that is I don't think many people realize that, but these god of the myths, they're talked about in they're talked about in various legends like that. These keepers of the myths, and they will arrive when various cosmic wisdom, sacred secrets of the universe, symbols of light, telepathic symbols of light, like the Ankh is, right? This is the coronal mass ejection loop, right? These telepathic symbols of light, when that knowledge is generated, these sentient plasma intelligences can push themselves into matter even, and appear on this third dimension and affect our world in various ways. And they have appeared in the past as gods, right? They've appeared in the past as there's like I said, there's different levels of these beings. Even there's agents that are literally like what people call the men in black. I think there's government agents that possibly were mistaken like this as well, but you don't mistake these ones. These literally come in what look like beams of light from the sky, and they're all of a sudden they're like pushed into matter on this plane, and most of them all look exactly alike, dressed exactly alike, and they're like psychic agents, and they've appeared to various people dressed for those specific time periods as well. And they've appeared in various people in ancient Italy, and we have lore of them. They're called the Capinera, which basically means the men in black. And they would appear a lot of time to mystics and shaman and witches and people like this that existed on the outskirts in the woods all by themselves, that had psychic abilities and that would be able to access and harness cosmic, stellar, and solar energies and knowledge. And they would appear, and sometimes they would either, depending on the vibrations and energy of the person, And depending on the vibrations and energies of the agents or the intelligences that appear, those people will either be coached and polarized towards the light or the darkness, or the information will be deleted from them, right? And because some people were almost not meant to have or wield the power or understand it or whatever, but sometimes the knowledge is taken from the event, like edited out, right? And so yeah, there's various very there this is always happening. This is always happening. They existed before time. They exist outside of time, right? And they're also have to do with guardians of sacred spots. And sacred, there's ways, there's been so many in the past on this planet, higher intelligences that have existed, much stronger than ours now. And whole astral worlds and dimensions have been created, doorways have been created from psychic manifestations in the past. Even sacred bodies of water have been used as reflections to form astral doorways and own their own worlds that exist within the plasma outside of Earth, worlds that exist literally within our magnetosphere, swirling plasma information within there, right? All sorts of halls of Amenti, if you want to say, or the various compartments of Gehenna in Hebrew, right? Right. So even Lake Nemi in Italy was created as an astral doorway. So sacred shaman, ancient priests, ancient cults, if you want to say, used ancient Lake Nemi, which was a volcanic crater, ancient volcanic crater that was formed into a lake. And they were using, of course, the sun's light is what forms the light of the moon. So they were using the reflection of the full moon's light into the lake, and they called it actually Diana's mirror, the goddess Diana, right? And that lake was being used to generate a thought form astral doorway world. Now, depending on and it could be even a doorway into another place on Earth, right? Depending on the imagery, right? You can even put a picture in front of the person who's doing the telepathic manifestation into the reflection, and you're manifesting that imagery into the reflection of the water, right? And that becomes an astral doorway. And you could take it from there to travel into and to walk into telepathically. Your spirit is literally leaving your body and walking into that astrally generated, telepathically generated world, right? And there's ways of doing that even with a mirror, right? So it's you could do a mirror astral doorway meditation this way, where and it involves water. I'm not going to go through the specifics, but you have to charge a sacred water a certain way and wash the mirror with that sacred water, and then you would use that mirror to form a thought, like a creation, a meditation world that you want to journey into, or a certain temple that you're visualizing that you want to visit. And you imagine that temple forming in the window, and you walk into the window, right? So where you can astral journey into that. It's about the imagery. Now, depending on the manifestation of the individual, this can be a powerful thing. So imagine if someone was a giant and they were 10 foot tall, and not only their physical sensitivities and everything would be heightened because they were so much massive. Not only their sense of smell and their sense of everything would be so heightened compared to ours, but also their telepathic abilities and bigger brain would be heightened, right? It's just so imagine what kind of manifestations they would be able to generate. And that's the kind of things that have been existed before on our world. And these ancient astral worlds that were created still exist right outside of our dimension and sometimes merge at sacred temples, at sacred spots where these spots were merged, right? Where these spots were used, and yeah, I mean, there's various places that were used like this. And recently we had um do I have I think I might have the pictures here online. Right in New York here in the Statue of Liberty, we had on 2/24/24, February 24th, 24th, we had the Statue of Liberty on the full moon. It was the the on the night of the February 24th. The full moon rose right on top of the torch of the Statue of Liberty. Now, that's not just a coincidence. That's very powerful energy. People don't realize what the Statue of Liberty signifies as well. So it's literally like breaking free from the underworld with the chains, broken chains around her feet. But that statue, I'll get back to some of the legends in a minute, how it's connected to the plasma intelligences. But that statue, right? That Statue of Liberty, if you know about Italian mysticism and even Greek mysticism and just the Mediterranean in general, some of the ancient legends, right? You come to find about Demeter and Ceres, right? The ancient goddesses, right? So that area of the Mediterranean is is just, I mean, it's all over. There's temples, ancient temples to the goddess of Demeter, right? But in Sicily, there's Lake Pergusa, right? Now, Lake Pergusa is one of these sacred spots that were used by the ancients. And it's sort of situated almost like in the center, right in Sicily, the umbilical cord of Sicily, right? The umbilical of Sicily. Like they talk about. Well, I'll get into that in a minute. But right there is the ancient legend where Persephone, right? Well, because the goddess Demeter, sometimes called Ceres by the Romans, Demeter by the Greeks. This was where her daughter, Persephone, was abducted into the underworld by the god Pluto, right? And this is very interesting. She was like gathering flowers, supposedly, and he abducts her into the underworld. Now, Demeter, her mother, loses her daughter Persephone, right? And now to go look for her, she literally takes her torch and lights it on the volcano of Mount Etna to help her search for her lost daughter. And she's wandering through the waters holding her torch, looking for Persephone, or in some Italian they call her Proserpina, right? But she wandered frantically over many waters and lands, finally returning to Sicily in despair, right? So she learns now from one of these river nymphs, right? These are waters now, cosmic waters, right? They use various earthly landmarks and waters to describe what spiritual adepts and initiates, what these stories were meant for, understand it's veiled for cosmic coordinates. So a lot of sacred waters that you see in the Vedas and ancient writings, these sacred waters are a reflection of on Earth of the sacred coordinates that they're talking about, which are in the cosmos, that are plasma waters, right? Sun waters, solar waters. These are solar gods, right? Solar kings, solar and lunar energies that all has to do with the stars, right? So when you're talking about Demeter lighting her torch off the volcano of Mount Etna, adepts know that she's lighting her torch from the sun and she's traveling through the cosmic waters And the nymphs in the cosmic seas are not they're not river nymphs on river on earth. They're literal river nymphs of creation, plasma creation, particles of creation. This is what forms life in the plasma clouds and lakes of waters. This is what brings, life. This is how life travels through the cosmos. And they're literally river nymphs, right? Generating life all over. They're whores all over the cosmos, right? River nymphs. I mean, that's literally what they are. It's talked about in the Vedic with the Nagas and everything, right? So she learns from one of the river nymphs. She gains knowledge from the Akashic plasma records, right? And the river nymph was called Cyan in this specific Mediterranean legend. What happened to her kidnapped daughter? The river nymphs give her the knowledge, right? So Persephone was then she basically when she gives the knowledge from the waters from the water nymphs, right? She threatens Earth now with famine and despair. Now let me explain this. She had to tread the cosmic waters to go towards Earth because Earth was where her child was abducted to. We are the underworld. Okay? So when you talk about Mount Etna, the origins of Mount Etna come from the fire from the sun. That's why it was named like that, because it was, bright and fierous like the sun. So in these origins, when they're talking about her traveling and getting knowledge from the river nymphs of where her daughter could have been taken to, the river nymphs, which is the plasma waters, were like, hey, she's not around here. She's on Earth. She's in the underworld, right? So when this happens, she then threatens Earth with famine and despair, that she'll come there and the sun basically will bring hell upon Earth with a solar disaster. And that will bring famine and despair, right? So you're talking about a coronal mass ejection blast happening, right? And this is the spear of the gods. This is the noose of the gods. This is why she's also wears the vulture head, and the mother goddess is talked about in ancient Egypt and ancient Vedic and all of this really well, as well as ancient Italy, like I'm talking about, like the great prototype of the Immaculate Conception is also in ancient Egypt as that goddess Neith, right? And she is the one that was formed without sex, right? This is talking about like even like a generated from the stars, right? Or from even like a bacteriophage, a virus being brought and bringing new life, right? Being formed without sex, right? So she was brought here through a bacteria or a virus, brought here through the solar wind, the cosmic waters, poured here without sex, without life. She's brought here to this planet to form creation, an immaculate conception, right? Without sex, without right? She gives birth to herself. And this is that form of that virgin origins of that virgin mother, which Mary later inherits, right? But the origins of it go way back. I mean, you could go to the Vedics of Aditi. She's a solar virgin, Aditi of the mother goddess, right? And this is later become Hindu and Arianists and all of this. And she was the boundless heaven, right? And she is not only the celestial vault of heaven, But also she appears as that tree of life, right? This is the magnetosphere around Earth, right? As well. And she pours out those divine waters on Earth, right? So this is very interesting. And she's that celestial ship of the North, right? How the North Pole is pouring in all the cosmic waters that come in as auroras and everything else. She is the ship of life. And also, you'll see her appear as fish goddesses, like Atergatis of Syria, and various things like that, right? Who's the mother of Semiramis, who's the mother of giants and things like this. Well, the net of Neith as well is the prototype of people, even with the call birth, like myself. You have this net of Neith, which is she fishes her child from the waters. This is the prototype of the call, in which some children are born it's still enveloped in, right? At birth, like myself. And Neith also is, if you look into ancient Harapalo, there was no male of this creature, right? She was impregnated by the cosmic wind, and she became actually she became Mother Nature, and the wind actually became the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit. This is the solar wind. This is the plasma intelligences and the sentient plasma intelligences that push themselves into matter and form creation, right? And uh Isis, Isis is the mother of all gods, right? She appears as Neith, she appears as Isis, she appears as Hathor, as Sekhmet, as Venus, many others, many other names. I can do a whole show on the various names, Astaroth and Inanna and Ishtar and Bridget, and I mean it goes on and on. But she always, with Isis, remember, she wears, like the call, she wears the veil, right? The veil of divinity, the veil of the amniotic sac, the veil of life. It's the cosmic veil and it's the earthly veil. And Helios, who is actually, she bore the fruit of Helios, the sun, right? The mother, Isis, who's the virgin mother, symbolized also by the lotus, the Mary of the lily, right? She wears the veil of her divinity, and no mortal can lift the veil. And the fruit she bore was of Helios, the sun, right? And Helios, the sun god, was called the light of the world. He brings the light. He's born in the cycles of time. And Isis was the sacred heart of Ra, the sun, right? And even in Notre Dame, was built upon a sacred temple of the sun of Isis, of the solar temple of Isis, you know, and she was even carved as a siren with the body of a woman and the tail of a fish, right? So whole sacred spots were dedicated on this. Good to have you, Jessica Steed. We're going to get into something related to you as well and your reading, right? So we're gonna go private. We're on Patreon as well, so you guys can join me on Patreon. If you're a Patreon member, the Zoom link is up on Patreon, because I want to go privately and talk about some of the scrying of the crystal skulls and how I was shown cities that exist outside of Earth, within the magnetosphere, within the plasma, and how some of these cities might have been photographed by Hubble telescope and in the 90s that was covered up and portrayed as a satire article. And I also want to get into the Bulgarian cave system, right? And some of the things that I remote viewed that are buried there, and how I was pushed out of the remote viewing by some of these guardians. All right, so we're going to get into that, and we're also going to get into finishing some of the stuff that we're getting into now. We're not going to just leave you guys hanging, because this is very powerful information. I'll show you guys right here. I'll share screen with you guys and show you the torch of the other night. This is on February 24th. February 24th, 2/24/24, how right above the Statue of Liberty appears that fiery red moon, blood moon, basically, right? The winter moon. So this is very powerful, everybody. Very powerful for the Vatican area as well, which are totally connected to this statue. And I mean, these are replicas, ritualistic replicas of Demeter, Venus, Neptune, Juno, Diana, Vulcan, Minerva. It's related to Heracles and Pluto and Enceladus. All these ones, right? There's a famous temple in Sicily of Demeter in a town that's actually related to Mount Etna because just of the name of it. It's called Enna, 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 right? So Enna is literally now called Castro Giovanni in Sicily, and the ancient underground Strega families, the hereditary family lines, they actually have a secret code name for the town still, and it's the Enna, right? They always call it by Enna. It's like a very sacred name, right? No one calls it Castro Giovanni with the hereditary families. They call it that ancient name, but it was built on very ancient sites of other ancient goddesses of the Sikels, of the Sikhs, right? They were spelled Sikels, ancient civilization, who also had very similar attributes to many Greek goddesses that were similar. Just secret. Certain cultures had secret names. Even in ancient Italy, the goddess Diana, they have certain families will have a secret sacred name for her, like Heterodia or different names like this, Herodias, but they'll be said in a different way, a certain secret name that only that family will know, right? And you know, people, there was initiation rituals that were associated with these statues and these sacred fire torch temples, right? Which ultimately has to do with the sacred fire intelligence that's coming and being harnessed from the sun, what never sleeps. The sun might set, but it never sleeps. It's always burning. And that's what these sacred torch, sacred fire, Vestal Virgin temples were about, right? And the goddess, I mean, they take it very serious in the Mediterranean. I mean, there's certain temples where men aren't allowed at, certain I mean, where even women aren't allowed at, and things like this, where certain like you know sacred temples and which are now owned by the Catholic Church and our churches, they're actually looked at as where certain genders can go and things like that. And this has been powerful beliefs, right? And but you have all cultures that invaded the Mediterranean, especially Sicily, and fought over that land for it's a gateway to the Mediterranean there, that area. And there's like countless cultures that fought over that island of Sicily, from the Phoenicians to all sorts of people, the Normans, all sorts of people fought. I think the Gauls. I mean, there's just people were invading cultures, were invading Sicily for so long and fought over that land for a reason, right? And sacred temples were there that existed, and they still exist to this day. Just they're ruins, but those spots are built on sacred energy spots, right? So people don't realize that Ceres or Demeter, I mean, this and Proserpina and these names, I mean, yeah, there's the site that's also of the Minorite friars now. I think that's who is in charge of it. And it's a site that's on uh an ancient temple of Persephone. And on the grounds now, it's owned by a monastery, right? And they actually prohibit any women from viewing this temple, right? And the Minorite friars have forbidden women to go near it. That's how powerful of a sacred goddess temple it is. Imagine that. So the Catholic Church bought that temple, those grounds, set up a monastery for Minorite friars to make sure no woman even sets their eyes upon it. You realize how crazy and incredible that is? How come that's not talked about? Right? Now, uh Monte Arsenal as well, and this is in honor of the late Dr. Leo Martello, one of my mentors, right? I'm continuing his ancient his not ancient but his research of ancient writings, right? He passed in the year 2000, and he was one of the most dear friends of Laurie Bruno, and he actually was a really dear friend of my uncle, not my uncle, my mom's first cousin, Donald. He knew him really well, and his last name was Colombo. He passed away now, and um, they were actually really well. I think they were actually lovers at one time, actually too. But Leo Martello was known for his books on the old religion, and he was known for actually doing one of the first witchcraft events in Central Park, Italy, New York, where in the I think it was in the late 60s or 70s, where they had like a parade fair thing, right? For all the Wiccans and the mystics out there, right? So he's not recognized too much, and that's for a reason. Pro pro, pro-sexuality, like, I don't think he was into the transgender thing too much, but he was definitely into like people being having their own choices and things like that. So he fought for people's rights. And he had a horrible life growing up. He was actually comes from hereditary Strega, right? Family lines on both sides. And he ended up being in a Catholic group home as a child, um, and he got molested and victimized by the Catholic priests. So he ended up going into his ancient roots and finding his ancient roots, right? And it led him to going deep for some of the knowledge and being initiated in some of the the craft and traveling all over the world and doing things like that. So he wrote many books on the old religion of Sicily, books on how to prevent psychic blackmail is one of his famous old books that I have signed copies of. But yeah, he was a great author, and he was a dear friend of all of us, and Laurie Bruno especially as well. Laurie Bruno has the rights to his books, and maybe she will pass that on to me one day, maybe. But most likely she'll give it to her son, I guess. But I definitely would do the best with it. I know that. But Sicily has all of these endless temples of ruins of the goddess, right? Underground catacombs, all sorts of prehistoric cemeteries cut right into this freaking rock, and um all sorts of ancient sarcophaguses are still buried and still in various cave dwellings that people don't know about all over the planet, and we'll get into that as well. But yeah, you have temples of Neptune, temples of Apollo, temples of Minerva, Diana, Bacchus, um all these cultures that affected those areas of Sicily, so you have all these different temples of Heracles, of Juno, of Ceres, of Minerva, right? There's all of these temples that exist all throughout Sicily, some on uh, prehistoric cut into the rocks and hillsides and things like this. Acropolises. There's the Temple of Ceres at Enna in Castrogiovanni, and it only has some of the rock formations that are left of it, but the ancient site is known, right? So that leads me to get into some of the ancient cave systems. Oh, so I mentioned also what I'm going to be talking about on Patreon. I put water. I didn't even eat yet, and I fell asleep early last night. That's why I was up like 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning today, because I was gonna do this live stream last night at 9:30, but I totally fell asleep when we got home because I took my daughter out to the arcade in the bowling alley with to meet one of her friends at like 5:30, but we ended up being there way too late. And by the time I got home, it was like almost 9 o'clock already. And like I got undressed and showered and got my daughter, she got showered and we sat on the couch for a minute. Next thing I knew, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I totally fell out and I needed to sleep. Uh, and I haven't slept like so many hours in a long time. Like I've only been getting like 3 or 4 hours sleep a night because I've been working so hard on things like that. So I totally crashed for a little while. And uh what was I gonna what was oh, so I mentioned what I was gonna talk about on Patreon last night. It's related to some of the scrying of the crystal skulls and things that I was shown. All right, and we'll get into it more deeper. But so you can literally scry with a mirror as well with crystal skulls, right? And you can use a candle flame actually as well and a bowl of water. And the bowl of water is used also for different things to for and I'll get into the specifics on Patreon, but you can scry for past lives where you'll literally be shown faces of past lives and information will come along with it depending on how strong your connection is, right? So different faces will sometimes the crystal skull will show different faces as well within the skull of itself. And I've been shown various images with inside of quartz skulls, and I've been shown images from the skull reflecting in the mirror, and then that reflection in the mirror of the skull will morph into an image of sometimes a person, and that person it'll come with some image about a past life or knowledge of it. The same thing will happen sometimes with uh like what happened recently with a certain city like structure or temple like structure. And what's interesting is that this is from this picture right here. This is from Nick Nocerino, Joshua Shapiro, and Sandra. Do I have it right over here somewhere? It's an old book. Uh, Hard to find it nowadays, but this is a signed copy that I have from the original when it first came out. Um, that's I got my bookmark that I got hanging out. So this is a signed copy that I have that my mom actually got when it first came out. This is first came out in um 1988. So I was 10 years old. So Nick Nocerino is sort of the OG on crystal skulls with bringing him the knowledge of them to sort of the West in the United States. And this is from the cover of their groundbreaking book, right? So this is the Mitchell Hedges skull. This this structure you see here is one of the temples in Tibet, a monastery temple in Tibet, on in the mountains of Tibet, from one of the guys that the one of the priests, the Tibetan priests that they talk about in the book, that is also connected to the crystal skulls and meditating with the crystal skulls. And this is the Mitchell Hedges skull. And the Mitchell Hedges skull was showing Nick Nocerino and his team that were experimenting with the skull at the time. They were given access, special access to the skull, where they were able to work with it and photograph it and do different types of photographs of it with different types of equipment, where they were able to take the aura of the skull. They were able to take certain like x-rays of the skull and different things like that. So they also show certain pictures in the book where they were shown little cities inside the skull that look very similar to this as well, and also look very similar to this picture, which is rumored to now be from just a satire fake article. But the origins of this is very interesting, because this was rumored to be smuggled from NASA in the 90s as the Hubble's telescope basically taking a picture of a star cluster, and when they zoomed in, it showed a city in heaven, a city in space. Now, later on, everybody like said it's not real, that it was just part of a satire article, that was the origins of it. And I remember the guy's name. I have it written down somewhere that originally came out with it. And all I know is it could be fake, it could be real, but I have seen similar images that I was shown that exist outside of Earth, within our plasma sphere around Earth. Similar images that exist, and they're like light ships, but little cities, almost like Captain Harlock from anime Battleship. That's like a spaceship, but it's almost like a temple spaceship, but it looks very oriental, like Asian type influence, like ancient Vedic or Asian type, like a flying temple battleship, right? But it exists and it's stationary, right? But it's floating, like existing there, and it's only detected telepathically, or maybe through certain instruments, like how they detect plasma and measure plasma, certain wavelengths and things like this, right? How they measure magnetospheres, how they see things like this, right? That's not detectable by the human eye in this realm, right? So this I don't know if this picture was real. What comes to me is that my body responds to it, and it feels like a morphing of what other dimensional views on other octaves. Earth has various levels to its existence. Our sun has various levels to its existence. Our galaxy, right? So maybe if you took a picture of our Milky Way galaxy from outside of our galaxy, if you were able to photograph it, it might morph and look like a giant freaking universal city of different structures at certain like times. It might show its various levels of its existence. And I literally think that there's places that exist outside of our reality that we even travel to during dream time, right? And we're being taught, we're being given information, we're going on missions and doing things like that, and it all has to do with our psyche and us learning and trying to find our place in our, not just this reality, but our place in the in life, in general, because this is a planet of learning, this is a planet of experience, and we're all here for a special reason right now at a crucial, critical time in the universe, where things are specifically chaotic in our solar system with our sun, and ultimately with the planets that are affected by it. Right? And we're part of this solar system. We're part of the intelligences that emanate vibrations that are absorbed by the sun and the moon and emanated back downward, right? It's a cycle of harmony, of information that's exchanged. And because of our technology and because of what we're pumping out, we've been sort of uh we've been put in this prison in a way, right? Like we have like literally sludge around this earth dimension. And we're only getting a little bit of divine light trickling in through various portions of our shield, right? Well, it's time to open the floodgates, and the sun is going to open these floodgates and eliminate evil on earth. And unfortunately, a lot of it has to do with the thoughts of mankind. This is talked about in prophecies. They just didn't have the scientific ways of describing it, right? So Anna Maria Taigi. Let me read to you guys. Anna Maria Taigi. I talked about who she was before. Um, I don't even know if I have it all written down here. But she had her prophecy, and she was like a regular housewife that came from Strega bloodlines, but she was brought up heavily Catholic, right? And she actually came from seer bloodlines. She had Strega blood for sure, right? I even know she had Etruscan, an ancient Tuscan lineage as well. But she had a bastard of a husband that not really beat her up physically too much, but was like really mentally abusive and a real bastard of a guy. And she was a mother and a wife, and she sort of had to portray everything was not so bad to the community, the church, the everybody at the time, right? So I mean, this is hundreds of years ago as well. So um she when was she born? I have her uh a couple of books that were written about her life that I've read. I think it was in, I don't know the exact, I want to see the exact year. Yeah, so she died in 1837. She was born in 1769. So she was one of those ones that were also considered after she died, that, that she wasn't, her body was like not 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 decaying, right? So um that's a whole nother story that I've gotten into before about some of those. So of course some of those were faked, but we'll get into that, and I don't want to go off on another tangent. But she talked about, she actually is a very interesting woman. Um, let me show you guys. Let me show you guys something else. So let me see if I can pull up her mysterious son. All righty. So this is Anna Maria Taigi. And of course, this is an uneducated woman who could probably not even read or write, barely. A housewife, mother. And she talked about basically the Taurus sphere and telluric energies and being a yogi basically, right? So she had a lot of spiritual energy that she was pushing in and containing and stuffing down. So she most likely had a premature Kundalini activation and boom, bursted a lot of light energy and split her dome, right? And she was getting this mysterious spinning, what she described as a sun that would appear to her, this glowing orb. And she put it in very Catholic terms because she didn't want to be labeled a witch, things like that, right? So she went along with the church and said it was a crown of thorns that was circling around it. And this is a torus, right? She was describing a torus system, right? And she was getting images within the torus, and it was giving her information, right? This is one of the most legitimate stories because they didn't have the scientific way of describing things. And unfortunately, the Catholic dogmatic belief systems, pulled it into their domain, and they put very Catholic labels on her experiences. But she talked about a prophecy, and of course, the prophecy they started to label as they gave it. There's Catholic terms in there, but we gotta discern out of we gotta fish through that and get to the beef of the information and forget about the little Catholic things that were inserted in there, right? So she talks about how God's going to bring punishment on the planet, and it's going to come in the form of wars in a way, but it's going to be not just with wars, it's going to be evils that have brought around the earth that's going to eliminate also evil on the planet. Now, this is talked about in all sacred writings. But what's interesting, she doesn't really bring up the sun, but she has all the characteristics of a solar phenomenon, right? Some people have rumored, and you know what? I actually about 15 years ago thought it was a comet that would have came and did this, but I don't think it's actually a comet. I actually think it's a massive coronal mass ejection event, and it might even be in 2025 because I was shown things coming in 2025 related to the sun that might be brutal. We have a possible future probability outcome in 2025 that could be very drastic if we don't change the vibrations on this planet, right? So she was shown a possible future event, right, where it's going to originate on Earth, but it's going to be sent from the heavens also, right? So the problem originates here on Earth, but the chastisement is coming from the heavens, from the sun. It's more specifically, I'm adding, right? And in ancient writings, when you take it back to the oldest we have in the Sanskrit, ancient Vedic, the sun is the purifier. When there's evil on this planet, it brings the pasha, which is the coronal mass ejection loop. It's described as the golden noose that not only lassos souls and pulls them into the celestial waters, but it's the golden noose that removes the evil on the planet and sweeps it out. With its solar winds and solar flare and solar noose, it removes the evil on the planet. And it has to do with the vibrations and the thoughts that are being generated on the planet and the activity on the planet. This is talked about and mistranslated in many ancient cultures, even with the ancient Egyptian story, where it talks about the destruction of humanity when Ra brings Sekhmet as the eye, or sometimes it's talked about as Hathor, or but it's brought in the form of the eye of Ra, which is the eye of the sun, that starts to bring destruction on the planet. And what she drinks is the cosmic waters, not some beer that they talk about. It's mistranslated. This is what puts her to sleep on the nighttime when she rests, right? And she stops because she's about to destroy Earth completely. She starts consuming individuals of evil on the planet. And it's talked about in Anna Maria Taigi's chastisement prophecy, right? So she talks about how the evil is going to originate on Earth, but the other is going to be sent from heaven. And there shall come a time over the whole earth where an intense darkness will last for 3 days. 3 days, 3 nights, 3 days of darkness. Nothing can be seen on the planet, right? And the air outside will be laden with pestilence. And this will claim mainly, but not all, mainly, but not only the enemies of the religion, but it will claim mostly, right? Almost all, like 3/4 of the people, I think, of the world, right? It will claim mainly the enemies of the religion, but not only just the enemies of the religion. It's going to claim other people as well, right? And it will be any man-made light during this darkness will not work. Everything will be extinguished. So it's talking about the power going out, right? It's talking about that, right? And in 1837, she didn't have a real good way of describing all this man-made light that she was seeing. So Jesus said all this man-made lighting is going to be gone. During this darkness, the only thing that will be able to be lit will be blessed candles that people have inside their homes. And she said, people who out of curiosity opens their windows to look out or leaves their home will fall dead on the spot. During these 3 days, people should remain in their homes and pray the rosary and pray to God. So she started, all that Catholic stuff comes in. But it says all the enemies of the church, whether known or unknown, will perish. And over the whole earth during this universal darkness, with the exception of those who God will convert. She's saying that the air will be infected by demons who will appear in all sorts of hideous forms, right? But when all seems lost and hope is a twinkling of an eye, it will all be over. And the sun will rise again, she talks about, and shine again, as in springtime over this purified earth now, because it removed the evil, right? And then she talks about after 3 days of darkness that like St. Peter and St. Paul might appear. They'll come down from earth and they'll start preaching to the whole world and designate a new pope, she talks about, and that there will be a great light that will flash from their bodies, and they will bring a cardinal as a new pope. So she talks about all of this, Christianity now spreading all over the earth like a one world religion. And there'll be all sorts of miracles and all this happening, and the nations will all come back to the church as one, and Russia will come to the church, and China and England come to the church, so we'll see about how that goes, but I do believe she's talking about a solar phenomenon, and I do believe a lot of what she's talking about is there's many workings to make that come into fruition as well. Lynn Earthling is in the chat room. Gypsy JJ, what's up, Janice? Did you get your package yet? You should have got your package. Claw and Gloves, what's up? Jessica Steed. Is anybody trying to join me on Patreon? Because I'm sharing screen, so I can't tell. Let me see. No, nobody tried to join in on Patreon. It's just me here. So if you guys want to join in on Patreon, we can go further on there in a little while, but I need to take a break in a minute because I've been going for a long time, for a while already. I need to eat. I'm starving. I need to eat and get some. I only had a few sips of water in the last bit since like 3 a.m. I didn't eat. Last time I ate was like 5 o'clock last night. I'm starving. All right. So we went into a lot. We went into a lot also this morning, and we're gonna go live probably at 9:30 on my Patreon for those that want to join. So yeah, 9:30 if you want to meet, I'll go live if everybody wants to meet there. I got crystal skull readings available for people. I'm putting new products up every day. We have like over 800 items already up on my store and so much more in the inventory. So if you see something that you're looking for that you don't see on my website, if there's something that you're looking for that you don't see, let me know. I probably have it in the inventory. I just got in all new gemstones. So I'm going to be making some of them into pendants, but you can also buy these gemstones as is. So you can use them for meditation. You can use them for a jeweler to put in a ring or a pendant. I can make pendants out of them. And I can give them to you at both wholesale and retail price, depending on what you're looking for. So contact me. Awesome stuff that I just got in. Gemstone lemon quartz, gemstone citrine, gemstone aquamarine, gemstone morganite, pink morganite, gemstone apatite. Oh my God. There's a difference between the crystal and the gemstone. These are gemstone quality, some of them collector's grade, facet grade. So I also have the intense copper devices. We also have, I've had this one I've been wearing for 6 years. Starting to get a little dirty now, but you know what? I'm not going to clean this because if you're wearing it just for jewelry, then you could clean them. And I could teach you guys how to clean copper so it's shiny and brand new again if you want it that way. But I only recommend doing that if it's for jewelry alone. This is actually I use not for jewelry, but for energy, right? For bringing a fresh explosion of brand new electrons always to my mind, body, and soul. And this is a harmonizer system, infinity harmonizer system. I've had this about 6 years, so you can see it's oxidizing around the coil where it sucks in a lot of the negative energy and puts out the positive energy. Now, I'm not cleaning because as it oxidizes and ages, it gets even stronger, even stronger. So that's a powerful thing about copper. People don't realize that as it ages and oxidizes and it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So I'm not cleaning that sucker. I like the age that it's getting. I actually like both the nice shiny new copper and I also like the color it gets as it gets older as well. Some of my favorite copper pendants that I wear. This is one of my older ones. It doesn't look brand new anymore, but I like the age of the copper. I like how it looks. I've had this one for a long time. I've been wearing this pendant. A lot. There's so many of them that I have. I just recently made this moldavite one. Now I don't wrap moldavite in copper coils. Tektites are a little bit chaotic in a coil, but I do put the foil around it like that. Very hard to get real moldavite nowadays. I'm actually gonna give this one to my wife because it's very rare as a gift. But I do have other moldavite for sale, smaller pieces of moldavite. Very hard to get some real moldavite, but you guys, you can get your mini harmonizers. You can also get custom opal skulls. Oh, I got tangled up here for a minute. You can get custom opal skulls as well. I have amazing fire matrix opal. I'll do another video of it later today, but I just got in all new little skulls for people that are very high quality, that are affordable and for everybody, right? Even these little guys. Like this is a very high quality agate elongated skull. Very high detailed little mini guy and affordable for everybody. Really, really cool guy here, right? Really like this guy. So I got really, really cool little agate ones as well. So you guys contact me if I also just got new prophecy stones from the Libyan desert. Really cool ones. And if you guys don't know what prophecy stones are, they actually can bring an explosion of light and knowledge and visions into your whole body all the way down to your feet, and you could feel it vibrating beneath your feet and anchoring to the earth. Prophecy stones are powerful. They're named prophecy stones because the guy who originally discovered them in I think the Libyan or Egyptian desert, he named them the prophecy stone because he received the prophetic vision when he was meditating with it. This is an example of a prophecy stone. This is a really cool one. I actually use this one to channel in the cosmic energies in the skull that's open on the third eye. This is my third eye activating, third eye opening skull of agate. Using it right there. I've programmed this prophecy stone as well. So on my website, some of my most popular crystals are the ones that I program, and I don't have many that are programmed on there. Most of the crystals that you got, so you'll see on there, I write specifically if a crystal is programmed, right? So most of the bulk of my crystals on my website have not been programmed, but there's few that I offer that are programmed for people that I've worked with and specifically programmed for a specific healing purpose or strength purpose or longevity purpose or prophecy purpose or what have you, right? So those are some of my most popular items as well. So you guys can even find a prophecy stone that I programmed, and I am also a licensed Reiki healer and crystal worker, and I've been working with crystals for over 30 years. And I don't recommend anybody trying to program crystals or use crystals in that way if they don't understand and if they are not grounded person with who they are and how they fit in the world. So if you're not grounded in those ways, it can be very dangerous for you to start doing things like that. So if you want to start moving in that direction, I would either join my Patreon or contact me privately if you can't afford the $2 a month to join the Patreon. You can contact me privately and I can guide you in the right way. But thank you guys for joining me this morning. I definitely highly recommend you joining my Patreon, supporting me, and getting access to priceless information for less than a cup of coffee a month. I have over almost 8,000 subscribers here on YouTube. If half of you just join for $2 a month, I can actually start a whole new system of learning for everybody and be able to spread my information and share my products in a better way with the whole world in a much more efficient way. And I could start traveling to some of these locations and people can, in different places where people could come in person and get crystal skull readings, and I could work and do clearings with people in person, and I could start actually doing my mission in a better way instead of being very limited right now. So I'm literally getting by week to week. So if only half of you, I don't want anything for free. I offer daily information on my Patreon. If only half of you would subscribe to my Patreon, we can start changing the world together collectively, collecting the collective consciousness of our communities together. Right? So join me at patreon.com/the mystical spiral. Thank you guys, and spiral.